You ever find yourself watching a news report or listening to a political debate and thinking, are we even talking about the same reality? It's as if two people can look at the exact same facts and come away with wildly different conclusions. How is that even possible? Well, just recently we saw this phenomenon play out on the global stage with the former US president and the president of South Africa. A meeting ostensibly about diplomacy, but which quickly spiraled into a fascinating, if not a little unsettling, demonstration of how powerfully psychology shapes our perceived truths. Before we dive into the fascinating psychological underpinnings of this interaction, do us a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment below telling us what you thought of this exchange, and of course, subscribe to ioMatterz so you don't miss our next deep dive into the human mind behind power. The scene, a recent meeting between President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. The stated purpose to discuss bilateral relations, trade, and the upcoming G20 summit in South Africa. Sounds like standard diplomatic fare, right? But the conversation took an unexpected turn when President Donald Trump introduced claims of widespread white genocide and land confiscation targeting white farmers in South Africa, presenting articles and videos as evidence. President Ramaphosa, in turn, staunchly refuted these claims, explaining the complexities of crime in his nation and the constitutional basis of their land reform policies. What unfolded was less a negotiation and more a collision of deeply entrenched narratives. So what was really going on beneath the surface of this diplomatic encounter? This wasn't just a disagreement about facts, it was a masterclass in psychological mechanisms at play in high-stakes power dynamics. First, let's consider what might be driving the former president's persistent claims of white genocide, even in the face of strong refutations. This isn't a new accusation, and it doesn't align with comprehensive, credible data from South Africa that shows while farm murders are a serious issue, they are not racially motivated and are part of a broader high crime rate affecting all citizens. So, when the facts seem to diverge from the narrative, we might be witnessing moral disengagement. This is a psychological process where individuals or groups justify morally questionable actions or beliefs by sanitizing or distorting the reality. By framing the situation as a genocide, it activates a primal sense of outrage and urgency, allowing a more extreme position to be taken without the full weight of factual burden. It's about creating a narrative that absolves one of needing to engage with the full, nuanced truth. It's quite the rhetorical maneuver, isn't it? If you can convince people something is genocide, then any action, no matter how strong, can be justified as necessary. It shifts the burden of proof, making the other side constantly on the defensive, trying to prove a negative. No, we are not committing genocide. Next, observe the stark focus on white farmers by President Donald Trump, while President Ramaphosa repeatedly emphasized that crime affects all communities in South Africa, with the majority of victims being black South Africans. This highlights in-group out-group bias. It's a fundamental cognitive bias where we instinctively favor our in-group, people similar to us, and view members of an out-group, people we perceive as different, with less empathy or even suspicion. By singling out a specific racial group as victims, it mobilizes an in-group identity, potentially creating a sense of solidarity and galvanizing support among those who identify with that group, regardless of the broader context. The othering of a nation or a group within it makes it easier to apply a simplified, often alarmist label. Every public appearance, especially between heads of state, is a performance. And this meeting was no exception. Both leaders were engaged in significant impression management. President Donald Trump consistently seeks to project an image of a strong, decisive leader who calls things as he sees them, even if it means directly challenging his counterparts. His willingness to bring up controversial topics and even attack reporters in a public forum is part of this persona. President Ramaphosa, on the other hand, worked to project calm, reason, and diplomatic resolve, meticulously explaining South Africa's constitutional framework and the realities on the ground, even while visibly frustrated. He's trying to manage the impression of South Africa as a stable, democratic nation actively working to solve its challenges, despite the external accusations. It's a strategic dance to control perception, both domestically and internationally. Think about the moments where President Donald Trump lauded his many friends from South Africa, including famous golfers like Ernie Els, while simultaneously describing the nation as a place where white farmers are being executed and their land confiscated. This juxtaposition can lead to cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes simultaneously. To alleviate this discomfort, individuals might dismiss conflicting information, rationalize their beliefs, or seek out information that confirms their existing views. In this case, it suggests a pre-existing narrative about South Africa that is so strong it can coexist perhaps uneasily with personal positive relationships. Finally, we can't ignore the long-term impact of repeated emotionally charged claims. The concept of the sleeper effect suggests that over time the impact of a persuasive message can actually increase, even if the source is initially dismissed. When narratives of genocide or chaos are continually introduced, even if refuted, they can, over time, subtly influence public opinion and create a sense of fear conditioning. People might develop an unconscious association between South Africa and danger, making them more receptive to future negative information and potentially impacting real-world decisions, like investment or immigration. Recall the tension in the room when President Donald Trump presented his visuals, a display of what he claimed were articles and videos depicting the plight of white farmers in South Africa, including graphic imagery of grave sites. It was a dramatic attempt to reinforce his narrative, with the camera capturing his assertive demeanor. Immediately following, President Ramaphosa, though challenged, maintained a composed front, calmly but firmly countering the accusations by explaining the broader context of crime in South Africa and emphasizing the country's constitutional protections for all citizens. This stark contrast in delivery and content perfectly illustrates the psychological battle for narrative control. If you've ever felt crazy for noticing these seemingly contradictory statements or the selective focus in political discourse, you're not. It's not about you being crazy, it's about understanding the system, the human psychology that drives how power operates and how narratives are constructed. Recognizing these psychological tactics isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming a more discerning citizen, equipped to filter through the noise and demand a more complete, nuanced picture. Because people shape power, and psychology explains people. This is ioMatterz. If you found this explanation insightful, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the human mind behind US politics and corporate power. We'll see you next time.